In this video we're going to talk about how to create a wagon sketch, how to transfer this sketch then into a more extreme 3/4 front view. After we now have finished our rough sketch for the rear view, we can now think about make a little bit more detailed sketch of the rear view as well. So based on what we have designed here, we can now make a bigger, more detailed rear view sketch. But we still keep a bit more extreme perspective than this one, like we make a bit more this type of sketch, but a bit bigger and with more details. And again we're going to start with these two wheel arches and the silhouette. And when we are happy with our silhouette, we can start to think about the design, about the rest of the car. So I think this looks quite okay for now. Maybe we should introduce a bit more shoulder here. When we look again at this sketch, we have now kind of a similar perspective as this one, but we see a bit more from this angle. So we have a bit more kind of a similar perspective to the front, but we don't twist it down, we only twist it in one direction. So when we look now a bit how we arrange the ellipses, we end up with this ellipsis on the top part of the ellipse, more or less on one level. So here is more or less the horizontal, the horizon. So everything happening on this level is more or less without big perspective distortion. Okay, so let's think about the C-pillar, which we sketched here in the side view, this kind of way. So let's think about how it would look in this situation. Probably something like this. And the thing is, your car in the rear view, it really ends with the front wheel, because when you look at our perspective here, at the top view, it's impossible, when you draw a line from here to here, it's impossible to see anything which is happening here. So as well, it ends with this corner. It's not possible to see anything of this part. So this is more or less our reference, and we can also, we can always check our reference points from which we have from the side view, like we have the shoulder as a reference point. We can always check where we end up here. And so next thing I would do, sketching in the center line, and we have here in our side view sketch, we have this kind of feature here, which is going out of the light catcher from the side. So maybe it makes sense to first introduce the light catcher on the side of the car. To then have a good reference for this line actually. Okay, we have this line, and somehow just in between this line, which would be this one here, and this line, there need to sit the tail lamps. Can make a similar kind of tail lamp design like front. It looks a bit Volkswagen-ish. And we have this feature, this light catching feature here in the back. Okay. And again, because the car's taping a bit, you see more of the wheel here. And again, we're going to use the similar trick like in the front. We added this kind of wheel. Even if it's impossible to see, we can also do that in the rear view to give the feeling that there's actually that the car is wider than it actually is. All right. Yeah, and again, this corner again is our focal point. So everything we do in this kind of area needs to be most detailed and have the most contrast. So when we're sure about our lines, we go down here stronger, and we can also, I mean, we know what we're going to do for the wheels. So can already start to put those in. And for the front, you just do it really rough. You don't really spend much time for the wheel in the front, because it's so far away. And because your eye already sees this wheel, and when you just give an indication what's happening here in the front, it's enough for your eye to finish the sketch for you. You don't have to do it. So what else do we have? on the side. We have this center line, which we still need to define. Maybe we have like a little kink here. Well, it looks a bit too much Volkswagen at the moment, but it was a bit better in the smaller sketch. Let's put an Audi logo in it so that there's not a mistake. So okay, and now you can think about kind of an underbody line. You know, usually you put like an exhaust pipe or something like that in this area here. I don't know if you want to have one for now, or if we just call it whatever, air outlet. Or we can make more design like this. Yeah, I think that's better. And you can see I already started to shade a bit, and that's really nice from the side view. You can really see which surface is actually catching the reflection from the ground, and which surface is actually catching the reflection from the sun or from the sky. So we can say this surface here, which would be this one, definitely would sit in the shadow. So we can actually give that a little bit of shading. There it's important that you already sketched your light catcher here, this one, because this obviously is facing up, so this is actually catching light from the sun or from the sky. So and again, you can also introduce here the indication of the reflection, which I've shown in the front and in the side view, like this type of reflection, where you define basically the wheelhouse connection to the body. But this time I would like to show you a different technique, a shading technique, where you actually shade in the direction of the surface and define by shading the surface how the volume is actually shaped. You basically go always in the direction of the surface, and so you don't shade always in the same direction, but you actually shade in shape of surface. And you immediately get a different kind of feeling for what actually is happening in this kind of surface. You can do that. I just wanted to show it here because it's a nice example. This fender, this strong shoulder with a very defined line on top. It's a perfect example where you probably would use this kind of shading technique to explain how this surface from the wheel arch is actually connected to this fender line. You can also use this, use a shading to define a corner, for example, in the glass. You can say, okay, here's actually the corner, because you can see in the side view that the rear window is wrapping around quite a bit. That would mean the corner is probably somewhere here in the middle of the tail light, so maybe somewhere here. By giving a little bit of shading, sometimes that helps, not always. To show a change of direction. You can also here use the shadow of this roof part to kind of describe the shape of the rear window. As this is wrapping around here, you can say, okay, this is catching here actually more darkness, and these kind of little things help sometimes to describe a shape. And so let's sketch the C-pillar on the other side and the A-pillar on the other side, and then let's see which kind of window reflection we receive here. But always kind of try to think through the car as a whole object. That always helps you to figure out certain situations, and it definitely helps you to get along in almost every view. And again, this kind of outline is going to help you a lot to describe the shape also which is happening here. Of course, you can always use these kind of helping lines to define a bit better the surfaces, but you can also use a shading technique, and sometimes that's enough. But when you really want to avoid misunderstanding, really try to use the little helping lines to describe your surface. But I guess we're actually quite in a good position with our rear view. You can also always introduce this kind of shadows and shading on the side of the vehicle, but yeah, I guess we're actually quite good with our design. All right, so I guess we have a rear view.